Welcome to my channel. I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton, and today's video is my top 10 villains of history. These individuals that I've selected as my top 10 villains are in no particular order, but these are the villains that I've chose that represent the worst of mankind. First, Edward II Longshanks. With a name like Squirtum Malus, the Hammer of the Scots, you'd understand why he makes my list. Edward inherited the thirst for land control and power that the Anglo-Norman lords and kings were known for, in not only Scotland, but in Ireland and France. Edward's ordered execution of the great Scottish patriot William Wallace in such a cruel manner easily puts the so-called Hammer of the Scots in my top 10. Oliver Cromwell, aka Ironsides, supposedly the Lord Protector. Cromwell was insanely driven to murder his opponents in the name of religious zeal. This is a realization in Ireland where Cromwellian troops carried out his orders of genocide, killing and raping men, women, children, cattle, sheep, and even dogs. Entire villages were bombarded and burnt to the ground, leaving the survivors that were not murdered homeless and without a way to feed themselves. Some consider the man a hero of some sort. But put religious preferences aside, Cromwell was a cruel, murdering tyrant who was more than likely burning in hell for the horrific crimes against the peasantry of Ireland. In my opinion, he is no different than Hitler or Mayo. Next, Adolf Hitler. He should make everyone's top 10 list. An insane madman, fueled by delusions and fascism. Hitler made a target of the Jews and Slavs, and anyone else that didn't fit his radical thought of racial superiority. One of the most evil individuals of all time. The name Hitler is synonymous with evil. Next, the Duke of Cumberland, Prince William Augustus. With the nickname of Butcher, Cumberland, it's easy to see why he makes my list. His selection is more personal to me as he was the man responsible for hunting down and murdering the Scottish Jacobite forces after the Battle of Culloden. Cumberland ordered his troops to show no quarter against any remaining Jacobite rebels. French army personnel, including those who were British or Irish born, were treated with the same contempt. His troops traversed the battlefield and stabbed any of the rebel soldiers they found left alive. When Cumberland learned that a wounded soldier near him belonged to the other side, he instructed a major to shoot him. When the major refused, Cumberland ordered a private to complete the job. All of those troops believed to be rebels were killed, as well as non-combatants. Rebellious settlements were burned and livestock were confiscated on a large scale. Over 100 Jacobites were hung. Women were imprisoned, and droves of people were sent by ship for trial. As the journey took up to 8 months, many of them died on their way. This defeat of the Jacobites resulted in many Highlanders being removed from their lands during the Highland clearances, forcing them not only off of their homestands, but to flee from their country into Ireland, the United States, and Canada. Joseph Stalin. Stalin doesn't get near the credit that he deserves as a murdering, sadistic tyrant. This is mainly because Hitler stole the spotlight in the tyrannical madman department. But Stalin is as evil and cruel as Hitler, and was actually responsible for much more murder than Hitler. The famed Nazi concentration camps did not die with Hitler. They were carried on an even greater expansion by the cruelty of Stalin's vicious policies. Male, equal to both Hitler and Stalin, gets even less credit and attention for his murder and rape and imprisonment of his own people in China. Mao was a fascist communist like Stalin, and carried out a wave of destruction against his own people that, like never before seen in history. Truly one of the most evil and murderous men of all time. Dermot McMurrough, the one man that holds the blame of the English invasion, occupation, and dominion over Ireland. Dermot was the King of Leinster in Ireland. In 1167 he was deposed by the High King of Ireland, with their unconqueror, or Rory O'Connor. Rory is a far distant grandfather of mine. So this hits home. But back to the reason Dermot was deposed. The grounds for deposition were that he had, in 1152, abducted Derfagel, the wife of a king named Taran O'Rourke. To recover his kingdom that he was disposed of in Leinster, Dermot solicited help from the King Henry of England. At that time, Strongbow arrived and was promised marriage to the daughter of Dermot. Later, Henry mounted a larger invasion to ensure his control over Strongbow, resulting in the Norman Lordship of Ireland. McMurdo was later known as Dermot na Nagal, in Irish, Dermot of the Foreigners. He was seen in Irish history as the king that invited the first ever wave of Anglo-English settlers who planted the Norman conquest. This invasion had a great deal of impact on Irish Christianity, increasing the de facto ability of the Holy See to regulate Christian churches in Ireland, thus ending the great Celtic Church that at one time was free of the papal rule of Rome. The entire Anglo-Norman conquest and continued occupation of Ireland, and all of the death and destruction from the wars of rebellion and risings against these foreigners, down to the IRA defense of the Irish people and their rights, is entirely the blame of this man, Dermot, King of Leinster's kidnapping of another man's wife, and easily makes my top 10 list, and should make every person top 10 list if they are of Irish or Irish descent. Next, Charles Sullivan. The genocidal policy during the Potato Blight in Ireland was carried out by the policy of this man. History, for the most part, has been kind to this ruthless man, as most Irish don't even know the name like they know of Dermot McMurrough, Strongbow, Cromwell, Churchill, and Thatcher. But this man was responsible for the millions of Irish deaths in Ireland and the Irish diaspora. His policy is responsible for reducing Ireland's population by perhaps over half and destroying much of what was left of Gaelic culture. The moral failure was that Sir Charles, the British civil servant in charge of Ireland, believed that the more Irish that died, the better for the British, because they could finally expand their holdings and make them even more profitable in Ireland. His take was that the judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. Quite frankly, this man is one of the biggest villains in Irish history that well deserves a place in my top 10. Vladimir Lenin, sadistic, tyrannical, and paranoid madman that had anyone that crossed him in any fashion murdered, along with their families and associates. Lenin set the precedent for fascist tyranny in Russia. He is the architect of mass murder, deportation, and imprisonment of the people of Russia and Eastern Europe for the next 60 years. The blame for Lenin's star pupil lies directly on his shoulders, often overlooked because of Stalin and Hitler's atrocities. But Lenin was just as insane, cruel, and murderous as they were. Put ideology aside, Lenin's tyrannical record of murder, torment, and imprisonments was as great as any other historical figure of the 20th century. And last, Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann is often overlooked in the history of the Nazis, but this Adolf may even be worse than Hitler himself. Eichmann was one of the major organizers of the Holocaust and created the so-called final solution to the Jewish question. This quote alone makes Eichmann deserving to be a top 10 villain in history. Quote, "The death of 5 million Jews on my conscience gives me extraordinary satisfaction." Adolf Eichmann. These are my top 10 villains of history. Thank you for watching. This is my channel, and I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton. These villains give us reason to look at our opportunities to protect freedom, liberties, and justice for mankind around the globe. And as free men, it is all our duties to fight, to preserve, and to protect such liberties and freedom